Hello and welcome. I'm Asima Katauka and you are watching News X Well. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. Israeli forces kill Al Jazeera correspondent Anas Al-Sharif and 4 colleagues in a targeted strike on their media tent near Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza City. Israel claims Al-Sharif was a Hamas cell leader, while rights groups say he was targeted for his frontline reporting. Israel has now stepped up its military operations in Gaza after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered to take full control of Gaza City to defeat Hamas and free hostages, while the UN Security Council hears fresh calls for a ceasefire and more aid to the Palestinian enclave. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has also called for Ukraine to be involved in the upcoming President Trump and President Putin talks, which are to be held on Friday, as the other allies of Ukraine call for the decision to be made involving both parties who are involved. Iran's top security official Ali Larijani visits Iraq to sign a bilateral security agreement before traveling to Lebanon. Amid tensions over Beirut's plan to disarm Hezbollah, Tehran calls the move unacceptable interference while stressing support for Lebanon's unity and independence. Taiwan is negotiating with Washington to reduce the 20% tariff imposed by President Donald Trump. Vice Premier Cheng Li-Chiyun says he adds that talks are ongoing and Parliament will be updated on progress. North Korea calls upcoming South Korea-US military exercises a direct military provocation and warns of counteraction. Defense Minister No Kwang-chol says the drills pose a real and dangerous threat, despite recent signs of easing tensions. South Korea and Vietnam pledged stronger economic and strategic ties during a summit in Seoul, as President Lee Jae-myung hosts Vietnamese leader to Lam. Talks focus on expanding trade and investment amid global market challenges. China's Coast Guard says it took necessary measures to expel Philippine vessels from waters around Scarborough Shoal in South China Sea. It says the operation was professional and legal, while Manila has not yet commented. Reporters Without Borders has condemned what it calls the acknowledged murder of Al Jazeera correspondent Anas Al-Sharif by the Israeli army. The press freedom group told AFP it strongly and angrily denounces the killing of Al-Sharif and other journalists after Israel labeled him a Hamas terrorist and called on the international community to intervene. The Israeli military says it targeted Al-Sharif, alleging he led a Hamas cell responsible for rocket attacks and presented documents it claims prove his military role. The strike in Gaza City also killed 4 other Al Jazeera staff and 2 others near Al-Shifa hospital, according to the broadcaster and Gaza's health ministry. Now, for this discussion, we are joined by Ali M. Abushbak. He's an independent Palestinian researcher joining us live from Cairo. Thank you, Ali, for joining us today. Good to see you. Now, what was your reaction seeing that same person in media and journalist has been hit like this, targeted like this, and he is with others who were reporting with him?
Thank you, Osama, for having me again. Today it's a mourning day and it's a grave day for the Palestinian and for the freedom of speech entire the world. It is not the first action Israel deliberately targeting the journalists in Palestine, and particularly during this duration of the war. More than 300 Palestinian journalists have been assassinated by Israeli forces and by Israelis airstrike. The journalists and their family, as well as that's elaborated how much Israel's brutality and how much Israel doesn't have a moral and Israel's forces doesn't have any kind of commitment to the international humanitarian law. So Osama, yesterday at night, they targeted Anas Al-Sharif and Mohammed and Mohammed several of Palestinian journalists. That's deliberately by Israeli forces. And before this targeting Israel and its media machine used to claim that Muhammad Anas al-Sharif he was a member of Hamas, despite Al Jazeera refused and rejected such kind of a statement. But Israel, it was trying to mobilize the international community to adopt assassination of Anas al-Sharif and his friend. Before this, also they target civilians. Also, say also that Hassan several of Palestinians journalists. I can't remember the name. Unfortunately, he was also civilians and he was in hospital. Israel targeting his room in hospital and claimed that he participated in October 7 and he invaded the border between Gaza and Israel. About Hassan Slayh, they targeting him deliberately, as several of journalists, and we can't forget Shireen Abu Akleh, the correspondent of Al Jazeera in West Bank, and they got killed by Israeli sniper. And up to now, Israel reject and refuse such kind of claiming. But despite it's confirmed by the experts and by several of investigating. Uh, Osama, the sample of this targeting that what is coming for Gaza City is worth and terrible, because we know that Anas Al-Sharif, Al Jazeera correspondent during the Israelis invasion for southern part of Gaza in 2023 and 2024, he used to reveal the real face and the brutality of Israel on the ground. And he used to also reveal the starvation and about the lack of food and the lack of medicine in southern part of Gaza during the Israeli military operation before reaching to the ceasefire in January 2025. So Osama, the several of media outlets condemned the Israelis' action, and the several of Palestinians human rights group they condemned Israelis' action, as well as globally. We have seen and witnessed a several of condemnation. Israel doesn't care about the international community. Israel doesn't care about the morale and the ethics of war by killing civilians, by killing the journalists who used to cover the situation and describe what is happening on the ground by giving a culmination and giving a justification that they used to member of Hamas, and this is a totally Osama is a totally Israelis propaganda to find justification to target civilians and journalists. So more than 300 journalists Osama have been killed by Israelis airstrike and by Israelis gunfire. That's showing how much Israel is brutal on the ground and how much Israel doesn't distinguish between civilians and militant group, doesn't distinguish about any children and women in Gaza. They consider all of them, they are under the target and under the attack, and they are allowed to kill whoever. So today it's a mourning day by assassinating a journalist who was unarmed, who was completely innocent, to describe the situation and portray the situation for the international community, and to show the real face and the reality on the ground without any kind of modifying or without any kind of amplifying. Uh, it's a totally, it's a terrible. As I mentioned, Osama, this step by Israelis military and IDF, it has a
Yes,
symbolic. What is coming to Gaza City for the invasion? It's a terrible and
yes,
worth by killing the
yes,
followers on social media and killing the journalists. That's mean Israel is going to commit a several of crime in Gaza City by displacing the civilians. More than 1 million Palestinians, they are under the risk of displacement. More than 1 million civilians, they are suffering from the starvation. And Benjamin Netanyahu and his machinery, media and machinery propaganda, they are rejecting such kind of facts.
Yes, Ali, thank you very much for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you and we stay on this topic now. Israel's far-right Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich has criticized Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's plan to seize Gaza entirely, saying it does not go far enough. Speaking to the Times of Israel, Smotrich said the government-approved plan to take control of the city and displace nearly 1 million Palestinians should be expanded to include larger swaths of the territory. He argued that seizing and settling more land is the only way to maintain security and warned against stopping the military operation midway. Smotrich has long supported rebuilding Israeli settlements in Gaza, but said he would remain in Netanyahu's coalition for now, believing the plan's direction can still be altered. Now we go back to guest Ali M. Abushbak. He's an independent Palestinian researcher. Thank you, Ali, for staying with us. Now, what's your reaction? How do you respond to this internal disagreements within Israeli government about how to go forward with Gaza?
Also, there is a disagreement and division between the military and the politician echelon in Israel, as well as inside the military, the IDF echelon. There is a division and disagreement about the Israelis' invasion of Gaza. The most controversial things that Smotrich he's against the Israelis' plan and Benjamin Netanyahu's plan to fully invade Gaza, especially this minister, he used to support the settlement in West Bank, and he used to call for the settlement in Gaza and to departure the civilians from Gaza to other lands and start establishing the settlement in Gaza. The most controversial statement by Smotrich, this is against the fully invaded Gaza. I guess he's trying to accept the real fact on the Israelis community that they are against this invasion and this plan. Most of the Israeli community, they are disagree to and completely rejected to invaded Gaza and seize Gaza as well as control Gaza or occupied Gaza. There is a left wing in Israel. They are considered as a huge mistakes and putting its amount to sacrifice the Israelis hostages in Gaza and put them in the risk first, and second, it will cost Israel a lot because it's not such an easy operation in Gaza, and we have seen and witnessed the Gid'on's chariot in Gaza since May 2025 up to now has never achieved to any aims and goal. And we have seen that the policy of Benjamin Netanyahu about Hamas releasing the hostages under the pressure and under the military operation, that it's not working with Hamas and with Gaza. So most of the Israeli community, they are concerned about the life of hostages, concerned about the future of Israel as well, because since the beginning of starvation and emulation in Gaza, most of the international community condemned Israel, and most of the Israelis, also politicians and Israelis. Diplomatic, they consider that Israel now it's completely isolated from the international community.
Yes. Ali, sorry.
I guess it.
Yeah. Sorry, Ali. We're running out of time for this discussion. But Ali, as always, thank you very much for joining us and sharing your insight all the way from Middle East. Now we move on to our next news. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has emphasized that Kyiv must be directly involved in any Ukraine peace talks. He expressed both fears and hope ahead of the upcoming Trump-Putin meeting. Tusk stated that the United States pledged to consult European partners before meeting with Putin. He insisted that decisions about Ukraine should never be made without Ukraine's involvement. Tusk warned Russia that the West will not accept demands requiring Ukraine to give up territory. He concluded by affirming that Europe remains united in its approach to achieving a peaceful resolution in Ukraine. Now, for this discussion, we are joined by Glenn Grant. He's an ex-advisor to Ukrainian Defense Minister, joins us live from Riga, Latvia. Thank you, Glenn, for joining us today. Good to see you. Now, what's your take, what's your analysis, and what's your reaction about this news that other countries in Europe who are Ukraine's allies are pushing that this decision between President Putin and President Trump should involve Ukraine?
Yeah, well, I mean, there are so many pluses and minuses in this whole thing, and ups and downs, you could call it, that it's really hard to put your finger on any one single thing. I mean, Tusk is very clear that this is the case, that these talks must be with Ukraine, as are the leaders of UK, Germany, and France. The problem is that collectively they are still leaders of individual countries. They're not a strong enough group to actually to pressurize Trump. And you saw that Vance is basically saying the Europeans have got to do this themselves. We're not going to pay anymore. That's on one side. On the other side, nobody's sure what Trump and Putin are going to actually to say to each other if Zelensky is not in the room. And if Trump gets a good enough deal, he's going to come out and bully Zelensky to sign something. In that case, then life is going to be extremely difficult across Europe and for Ukraine.
And Glenn, now, how critical is Ukraine's direct involvement in these peace talks for ensuring any agreement respects its sovereignty as well as territorial integrity?
Well, it's fundamental. You don't go, Trump has no right and no authority to make any dealings on behalf of Ukraine at all, or on behalf of Europe at all. So it's absolutely fundamental that there is someone else in the room. But this looks very much like Trump intends to talk to Putin alone, and we know where that leads us because we've seen it before, and then come out and produce peace in our time, as in 1938. Zelensky is between a rock and a hard place. He needs America for support, but if he goes back and says, I've signed something which the country doesn't agree with, then there could well be a revolution within the country.
Thank you, Glenn, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you and we stay on this topic now.
Okay.
Thank you. Russian air defense systems intercepted and shot down 7 Ukrainian drones overnight and early Monday. Moscow's Mayor Sergei Sobyanin announced on his Telegram channel. The drone attacks targeted Moscow as well as the Tula and Nizhny Novgorod regions. According to Russia's defense ministry and regional officials, 3 people were killed in these strikes. Ukraine says its drones damaged refineries in Russia's Saratov region and the remote Komi Republic, as well as killing 1 person in Saratov. Kyiv says the strikes aim to weaken Moscow's oil and gas revenues and claims to have retaken the village of Betsalivka in Sumy region. The attacks come ahead of Friday's planned summit between President Donald Trump and President Vladimir Putin in Alaska, a meeting Ukraine and Europe say that must include Kyiv. Now we go back to our guest discussion with Glenn Grant. Thank you, Glenn, for staying with us. Now, do you think with recent Ukrainian drone strikes, also with recent Russian drone strikes still going on, do you think these meetings that are to be held on Friday holds any meaning?
To be blunt, no. unless, as I say, unless Trump folds in front of Putin. The strikes on Moscow that are going on are actually just designed to make sure that Russia keeps all the air defense systems around Moscow, many as they can, to save Moscow and Putin. So that gives Ukraine a chance to actually to do the other strikes and attack energy as they've been doing. And unless there's something special happens on Friday, they're going to keep wanting to do this because this is weakening Russia, and that eventually will bring Russia to the table. Russia's not going to stop. I don't think anything's going to stop Russia attacking because Putin depends for his life on actually beating Ukraine. Unless he gets something absolutely monstrously meaningful from America or Ukraine, he can't afford to go back to his oligarchs and say, I've got nothing. So this is going to be an interesting day on Friday.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Glenn Grant, for always joining us and sharing your expertise as an ex-advisor to Ukrainian Defense Minister. Now we move on to our next news. Now moving on to Asia, Taiwan is still negotiating for more favorable tariff rates after US President Donald Trump imposed a 20% tariff on the island. According to the Taiwanese Vice Premier Cheng Li-chun, Chun said that Taiwan's goal is to seek a more reasonable tariff rate from the US. Chun also further added that negotiations with the US were still ongoing. Taiwan has the sixth largest trade deficit with the United States, with 90% of that being from semiconductors, telecommunications, and other tech products. Rates for chips, electronics, and information and communication technology, which makes up the bulk of Taiwan's export to the US, will be subjected to separate US sectorial tariffs. Now for this discussion, we're joined by Ross Feingold. He's a political analyst, joins us live from Taipei. Thank you, Ross, for joining us today. Good to see you. Now, Taiwan claims that it still is open to discussions with US for these trade tariffs. Do you think Taiwan has any card that it can still play to reach something below 20%?
I think Taiwan has a number of cards it could play. Starting with the importance of Taiwan to the semiconductor supply chain and the increasing importance that semiconductors are playing with the growth of AI, the need for semiconductors for US military equipment, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the United States government certainly recognizes the importance of Taiwan, and there's no compelling reason other than a large trade deficit, to make things difficult for Taiwan, especially when Taiwan has also offered to take action to reduce that trade deficit, such as by purchasing more agricultural products from the US, purchasing more liquefied natural gas from the US, purchasing more weapons from the US, making more investments in the US, just like other countries in the EU have committed in their trade deals. So I think the Trump administration understands the value of Taiwan. So I'm going to remain optimistic on this, that the US and Taiwan will eventually reach a deal that will lower that tariff rate.
And now, what are the potential geopolitical consequences of these tariff disputes for Taiwan's relations with both the US and China?
The United States is Taiwan's most important international supporter. It's still that's willing to sell weapons to Taiwan. It's an important trading partner for Taiwan. So Taiwan is clearly attaching itself to the United States and has excellent reasons to do so. And that's why it's so eager to pursue a trade agreement covering those different areas that I just mentioned. China remains an important export market for Taiwan. In the past, it was an important destination for investment by Taiwan companies, although they're significantly reducing their investment in China in recent years and expanding their investments in Southeast Asia, India, the United States, even Mexico. But yeah, China is still important for business purposes for Taiwan companies. On the other hand, the reality is China also presents a national security threat to Taiwan. So the need to address the concerns raised by China is not going to scare Taiwan off from reaching a trade deal or buying more products from the United States and addressing that trade deficit. Again, Taiwan recognizes that its most important partner remains the United States.
And building on your answer, do you think that could this pressure Taiwan to diversify its trade partners or lead to deeper technological collaboration with other countries other than US?
Taiwan's definitely doing that. So when it comes to the technology industry, as well as traditional industries, they've expanded their manufacturing in other locations like Malaysia, Vietnam, Indonesia, Mexico. And in the tech sector, Taiwan's manufacturers have significantly expanded their presence in recent years in India. And the most important tech company, TSMC, has expanded its presence or invested in building manufacturing in Japan as well as Germany, in addition to its very large investment in Arizona in the United States. But when TSMC goes to Japan or Germany, that also means a lot of its suppliers will go there as well. So definitely Taiwan is diversifying where it trades, where it invests, but still the United States is the most important partner.
Thank you very much, Ross Feingold, for always joining us and sharing your insight as a political analyst. Now we move on to our next news. 8 people were killed and 3 others injured when gunmen opened fire outside a nightclub in Santa Lucia, Ecuador, early Sunday. Here's what Colonel Xavier Chango Lerena has said.
Por frente al local, la discoteca Nápoles, un vehículo tipo camioneta de color gris, conjuntamente con una camioneta, y luego de pasar por frente a lo que es el centro de diversión nocturna, detiene su marcha, se bajan varios sujetos de este automotor y con armas de fuego, tanto calibre 5.56 como calibre 9 milímetros, realizan disparos a las personas que se encontraban en la parte exterior de esta discoteca.
Authorities found 7 dead at the scene and 8th victim died in hospital. Among the dead was nightclub owner Jorge Urquizo, brother of the town's mayor, Ubaldo Urquizo. The attack took place in Guayas province, one of 4 under a 60-day state of emergency amidst a surge in gang violence. The region has recently seen multiple mass shootings. President Daniel Noboa has declared war on gang crime, but violence remains widespread, with over 4,000 homicides reported between January and May this year. Well, this is all we have time for. We will continue to bring more news updates from around the world.